Collision. Welcome to the channel, Spacefarers. If you're into intergalactic trials, deadly predators and humans doing the impossible, then buckle up. Today's story: the Galactic Tribunal ordered the Predator's execution, until it laid down at the human's feet. Smash that like, fire up the comments with your favorite alien species, and subscribe so you don't miss part 2, where the monster starts to speak. Now, let's get into it. The courtroom orbited a dead star. Its panels shimmered like wet obsidian, a floating monument to judgment, hovering in a silence so absolute it swallowed time. Inside, beneath a domed canopy of artificial night, 27 emissaries of the Galactic Tribunal formed a ring of authority. Their forms varied, some gelatinous, some crystalline, others floating in containment fields of nitrogen or liquid methane, but their expressions, however alien, all wore the same shape: disdain. At the center, encased in a kinetic stasis cage 3 layers deep, stood the creature known only as Subject Delta 7, a relic of the Precursor War. Towering, lean, and plated in overlapping scales of carbon-dense armor, it looked like a weapon that had evolved beyond its creators. Its limbs hung loose but primed, like a spring in permanent tension. Its eyes, 4 of them iridescent and without pupils, stared without blinking, unflinching under the barrage of holographic evidence playing around it. A Lauren archivist flared a display, grainy footage of Delta 7 rending through a colony dome on Vexus 2, moving like a shadow made of razors. A child screamed. A woman reached for a weapon. Both were reduced to red. More images followed: smoking towers, torn life forms, voided hulls. Death replayed in high definition, looping to emphasize the carnage. No one spoke in Delta 7's defense. No one had to. The facts screamed loud enough. High Arbiter Calith, a serpentine being of translucent skin and visible thought lumens, uncoiled forward. Subject Delta 7, Calith's voice crackled through 8 translator drones. You are a synthetic organic hybrid classified as a weaponized apex predator, outlawed under Intergalactic Concord Statute 1124. You stand trial for the obliteration of 2.1 billion lives across 6 sovereign colonies. How do you plead? The creature did not move. Calith nodded to a bioneural interpreter. Its vine-like limbs writhed, but it returned the expected answer. No telepathic signal. No response. Cognitive silence. Then it is mute and unrepentant. Calith's glow dimmed. Per statute, the sentence's termination. The tribunal hereby orders execution by molecular decomposition, to be carried out in 72 standard hours. The sentence fell over the chamber like frost. But then, from the inner ring, a figure raised her hand. A human. Her presence was unexpected. Some of the emissaries even recoiled instinctively, still unsure what to make of the relatively new species that had earned council admission barely 4 decades prior. I invoke the witness clause, said Dr. Ilara Mendez, her voice firm despite the weight in the air. She wore the charcoal gray uniform of the Human Exploratory Accord, her hair tied back in a tight twist, her eyes unblinking as she met the gaze of 27 civilizations. The room reacted like she'd spoken blasphemy. The witness clause, Calith repeated, more amused than angry. A quaint formality for lesser species. A final soul to observe the condemned before death, to remind the tribunal of mercy. And you volunteer? I do. You are aware this being devoured a man whole, on record, while still inside an atmosphere suit? Ilara's jaw tightened. I've reviewed all the footage. I've read the survivor reports. I understand what I'm walking into. And yet you believe it worth your life to stand in its presence? I believe, she said slowly, that calling something a monster doesn't mean it was born one. Calith's lumens pulsed, the alien equivalent of a chuckle. So Earth sends a poet to witness the devil. She volunteered without authorization from her planetary government. Another delegate interjected, an insectoid figure with a thorax that rippled like oil. Her species disavows responsibility. Even better, Calith said. Let the human have her farewell tour. 1 day in the cell. No protection. No security escort. No rescue clause. It eats her, she dies. The sentence stands regardless. No one objected. No one needed to. The doors opened. And Ilara stepped into hell. The containment cell was buried in the asteroid's core, reinforced with fusion-dampened alloy and double-redundant failsafes. The air was recycled and stale, and every 10 seconds the cage released a static pulse to ensure the creature within remained disoriented. When Ilara entered, everything stopped. Subject Delta 7 stood motionless at the center of the cage, a statue carved from war itself. But when her boots touched the floor with a soft click, its head turned. Slowly. Deliberately. She carried no weapons. No armor. Only a slate device and a small field recorder clipped to her coat. Her heart was beating hard enough she thought it might crack her ribs. "I'm not here to beg for your soul," she said. "I'm here to witness what remains of it." The predator tilted its head. That was all. She sat cross-legged on the floor just beyond the kinetic boundary, no closer than the safe line, and powered on the recorder. Static hissed. The device pulsed blue. "I want to tell you a story," she said, voice soft. No movement. "It's a story from Earth. About a creature called the Nandi bear. A beast feared in old legends. Said to steal children, tear men limb from limb, vanish in the dark. But one version tells a different tale, of a Nandi bear who only hunted because it was in pain. A hunter who, when a little girl offered it a bowl of water, laid down at her feet and never harmed another soul." She paused. Still nothing. But the predator hadn't moved. It hadn't charged. It hadn't growled. It watched. "I think you were built to be the kind of monster people tell stories about. But I don't think you asked for it." No reaction. Her eyes flicked to the timer on her slate, 23 minutes remaining. She stood. Brushed off her knees. "Same time tomorrow. Unless you kill me first." She turned. Walked toward the door. And behind her, for the first time, the monster moved. The scraping of claw against alloy echoed like a storm behind her. Guards flinched in the observation room. Dozens of races watched the feed, waiting for blood. Elara froze. Heavy footfalls approached. Measured. Not charging. Not hunting. She turned. Subject Delta 7, Kale, a name she whispered in her thoughts, walked to the barrier, its massive form trembling just slightly. And then it did something no one had predicted. It lowered itself, slowly, carefully, until its head was level with her boots. Then it folded its arms beneath it. And lay down. At her feet. The entire tribunal saw it. The feed captured every angle. The creature that had dismembered warships, that had torn colonies apart with fang and claw, now sat like a loyal sentinel before a woman with no armor, no weapons, and no right to be alive. Elara stared. Her mouth parted slightly. The recorder's light blinked red, signaling full storage. Then she reached into her coat, pressed a button, and whispered just loud enough for the audio to catch. "Not a monster." The doors hissed open behind her. She walked out without looking back. But the beast never moved. It only watched her leave. Elara returned the next day with less certainty and more resolve. The tribunal had expected her to return bloodied, broken, or not at all. Instead, she arrived without a scratch and carrying the same slate device, now loaded with new neural recording software calibrated for behavioral mapping. They hadn't changed the security arrangements, still no guard presence in the room, still no barrier between her and the creature if it breached the field, but now the observation gallery was full. Curiosity was a hard instinct to extinguish, even among immortals. She stepped through the threshold. The creature, Delta 7 Kale, whatever it had once been, was where she'd left it. Its enormous form lay curled against the wall, head resting against its clawed arms, back rising and falling in slow rhythmic breaths. It was a strange mimicry of rest, not sleep exactly, but something that implied self-regulation. Elara's presence triggered a subtle shift in posture. Not aggression. Recognition. "You waited." Its eyes opened. All four. She sat down just outside the inner line again, cross-legged, unhurried. The recorder blinked to life. "I thought you were following orders. Now I'm not so sure." Still no words, no sound. Just that unyielding gaze. "I want to try something," she said. "Something new." She pulled out a thin neural lens and with a short sigh, clipped it over her left eye. The interface shimmered to life with a faint blue halo, connecting to the slate device. A cautious hum rolled from its core as the neural mapping grid activated. "This will let me see fragments. Only what you allow. You can block anything. But if there's something you want to show me, maybe about who you are or what you remember, I'll see it. Nothing else." For a long moment nothing moved. Then Kale stood. Not fast, not threatening. But slow and smooth, each joint unfolding with controlled force. He walked toward the barrier. Elara stayed seated. Her fingers were steady but her legs wanted to run. He crouched before the kinetic boundary. His claws tapped the floor. She blinked once, sharply. The lens synced. What came next wasn't memory, it was immersion. She was falling through pain. A white corridor bathed in strobing red. Sirens. The scream of breach alarms and gurgled orders from helmeted handlers. Her body, or rather Kale's, was being pulled by steel restraints through an airlock. Dozens of soldiers aimed their rifles but none met her, his eyes. Orders echoed in a guttural dialect. Drop it on the surface. Containment protocols irrelevant. Erase local witnesses. Burn everything. Then, blackness. Went cold. The memory cut like a torn wire. Alara gasped. Her head spun. Her neck was damp with sweat. Abandoned, she said. They sent you out without a leash. Just a target and a list. Cale didn't nod. But he didn't deny it either. Did you remember it? The killing? He didn't react for several seconds. Then something extraordinary happened. He slowly raised one hand and, with a claw that could disembowel a battle drone, pointed toward the recorder. He tapped it. Then his own chest. Alara blinked. You remember all of it? He tapped again. Just recorder. Just. She understood. You replay it. Pause. Then a single nod. The barest inclination of that armored skull. Alara looked away. The weight of it crushed her lungs. A creature engineered to destroy was now haunted by the very memories its creators had hoped would make it unstoppable. She slid her slate closer, her tone softer. Why didn't you attack me? Day 1. You had every reason. You've killed trained soldiers in pressure armor. Cale didn't move. She waited. Then, just barely perceptible, he reached behind him, claw slow, deliberate, and gently lifted a small palm-sized object from the shadows near his side. Her recorder. The one she'd left the day before. He placed it carefully at her feet. Alara didn't touch it. Her breath caught in her throat. You listened to it? A low sound, barely a vibration, escaped him. A huff, almost like breath through cracked glass. But it was there. She smiled faintly. That story, the one about the monster who only wanted to be seen. That mattered to you? He tilted his head. Not a nod. Not agreement. But engagement. A mind working beneath the instinct. She leaned forward. Do you have a name? No answer. Or maybe you were never given one. Just a designation. Cale's gaze remained fixed, unmoving. Then I'll give you one, she said gently. We name things on Earth to remind ourselves they exist. That they matter. We name stars we'll never reach and animals that die the day we discover them. She paused, then whispered, I'm calling you Cale. No response. But something shifted in the room. The air seemed to bend just a little. I don't know if you understand that or if I'm just talking to fill the silence, she continued, standing up. But I'm going to keep coming back. And if you keep laying down instead of killing me, maybe one day someone else will have to admit that you aren't just a weapon. You're a person. Alara turned again. No sudden moves. No theatrics. The door slid open. Before stepping out, she looked back once more. Cale was watching. Not growling. Not moving. Just watching. She left the cell in silence. The next morning, the tribunal held a closed-door review. She is interfering with the course of justice, hissed the insectoid delegate, mandibles clacking furiously. This bond she's cultivating is artificial. Artificial or not, Calith replied, the creature has not shown aggression since her entrance. That in itself is data. You would have us debate compassion for a mass murderer? I would have us study what we do not understand. The room split along ancient lines. Scientists against military, the ancient empires against the moral philosophers. It was an argument as old as war. When a weapon begins to feel, is it still a threat or a victim? Only one voice cut through the noise. It came from a hologram, pale and flickering, the envoy of the Human Exploratory Accord. She does not speak for Earth, the hologram said coldly. She has gone rogue. Her credentials have been revoked. If she continues this line of contact, she will be exiled. We will not be responsible for the fallout. Alara received the notice that night. Her response was one sentence. Then I'm no longer representing Earth. I'm representing him. The next session in the cell brought no words. But it brought trust. Cale met her at the barrier. He no longer waited. He no longer recoiled. He mimicked her posture when she sat. Tilted his head when she read Earth myths aloud. Reacted, slightly, to her tone. When she laughed softly, he twitched. Like the concept was foreign but interesting. On day 5, she activated the empathy lens again. This time the memory came slower. A small room. A dying moon. And a child. An alien species, unfamiliar to Alara, trapped beneath rubble. His, Cale's claws moved the wreckage carefully, shielding the small creature from falling beams. Then the memory ended with Cale turning his head toward the stars. No orders. No overseers. Just silence. And somehow awe. Ilara removed the lens, blinking tears from the corner of her eye. "You spared her," she said. "And no one ever knew." Kale didn't move. But when she stood to leave, he did something new. He lifted a hand. And placed it, palm open, claws up, against the kinetic barrier. Ilara stared. Then stepped forward. Slowly. Careful. She placed her hand opposite his, flesh to field. The energy shimmered between them. Just a breath apart. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "we talk about what mercy means." The door opened behind her. She walked through it, her shoulders trembling. Kale did not move. But when she was gone, he remained at the barrier. Watching. Waiting. Remembering. Ilara stood before the tribunal without insignia, without backing, and without apology. Her credentials had been stripped. Her name had been struck from Earth's official delegation. What remained of her status was borrowed oxygen and the data slate in her hand. She wasn't there to plead. She wasn't there to beg. She came to tell the truth, and if they buried her with it, so be it. "You gave me 72 hours, she said. "I've used 58. The delegates sat silent, coiled in judgment. Their expressions unreadable, their minds calculating. Even Caliph, for all his translucent grandeur, offered no interruption. "You ordered me to observe a monster," she continued. "But I didn't find one." A soft static crackled from her slate as she raised it. The hologram lit the chamber, grainy, fragmented footage from her neural lens. A memory seen through Kale's mind. A dying child. Rubble. Kale lifting debris piece by piece. No one watching. No directives. No orders. Just action. Just choice. "He was designed to kill," Ilara said, her voice steady. "But he saved her. He risked himself without command, without recognition. Because something inside him, something buried and still growing, knew it was right." A ripple passed through the chamber. One of the crystalline delegates let out a chiming vibration, uncertain, almost contemplative. The insectoid delegate rose abruptly. "One memory. One single instance against a billion corpses. This is not redemption. It is statistical noise." "He remembers all of it," Ilara said louder. "He watches every moment he killed. He replays them. And it hurts him." "He cannot feel pain," the insect snapped. "He is a construct. Pain is a flaw his makers would have burned out." "Then explain why he shielded me from the blast." That silenced the room. On her slate, new footage flickered to life. Security cam archive, timestamped 16 hours prior. The explosion had erupted from a lower corridor. No warning. A flash of fire and plasma and shrieking air. The feed showed Kale stepping between her and the shockwave, absorbing the blow across his armored frame. He could have leapt clear. He didn't. "Someone planted a bomb in the tribunal vessel," Ilara said, eyes narrowing. "An act of terror, likely from one of your own factions. I wasn't the target. He was. You fear him so much, you're willing to murder witnesses and violate your own protocol just to bury the truth he represents." No one moved. No one denied it. Kale had survived the blast. Ilara had woken in the medical wing with burns on her hands and a mild concussion. When she'd asked about Kale's condition, the attending medic, a stoic amphibious species, had only said, "He stood until we arrived." Then he collapsed. Now he lay in a reinforced observation bay, sedated, healing. His bioreadouts fluctuated in slow pulses, something between hibernation and introspection. Ilara faced the tribunal one last time. "You want to destroy him because it's easier than asking what it means to have been wrong. You built a cage and now you're terrified he might choose not to break it." The High Arbiter spoke for the first time in minutes. "And what do you propose?" "A stay of execution," Ilara said. "Designation as a sentient subject under observation. Transfer to rehabilitation custody. Under my care. You are not recognized by any council. Then recognize him. And let me earn the right to stand beside him." The silence stretched so long it thickened the air. Caliph dimmed his inner glow, the closest his species came to a sigh. "We will deliberate." The chamber lights darkened. The floor shifted. The tribunal descended into its private quorum, leaving Ilara alone in the vast stillness. She didn't tremble. She didn't speak. She waited. When the walls parted again, the chamber was different. The tension had calcified. Lines had been drawn, between the old guard and the uncertain future. Some looked upon her with curiosity. Others with contempt. None with indifference. The High Arbiter rose once more. "By vote of 16 to 11, he said, execution is suspended. Subject Delta 7 is hereby reclassified as sentient entity Kale, pending full psychological review and species empathetic assessment. The insectoid delegate hissed with violent clicks. Caliph ignored him. Custodial rights will be granted to the one who risked death not once, but repeatedly in pursuit of understanding. Elara exhaled slowly. The breath trembled only after it left her. The tribunal, Caliph said, will not forget what it almost destroyed. She nodded. A single movement. Nothing more. They did not applaud. They did not smile. Victory here was never meant to feel like triumph. Later in the med bay, Elara stood beside Kale's stasis pod. His wounds had sealed. The internal bruising would take time. But the armor plating was regenerating. His breath had steadied. When his eyes opened, there was no confusion in them. No fear. Just recognition. I didn't run, she said quietly. Kale blinked. Slowly. Deliberately. And I'm not going to. She held up a new device, smaller than the recorder, built with layered AI language modules and Xenopsych integration mesh. This will help you speak, she said. If you choose to. She didn't press it into his hand. She left it beside him. A choice. Not a command. Kale looked at it. Then looked at her. And for the first time she saw not the monster from the battlefields or the creature in the tribunal's cage. She saw a question. A beginning. She turned to leave, but before the door hissed open, a sound stopped her. A low vibration. Not speech. Not music. But rhythm. A mimic of the human heartbeat. It came from Kale's chest. She turned back. Her eyes welled. I hear it too, she whispered. The door slid closed behind her. And for the first time in Kale's memory, no locks sealed shut. No weapons tracked him. No threat blinked red on the walls. Just silence. And space to choose. Kale stood beneath a sky he had never seen before. The dome above him wasn't real. The stars were simulated, a mosaic of light scattered across a projection shield on the outer shell of the rehabilitation outpost, but it was beautiful nonetheless. For someone bred in darkness and blood, anything that wasn't red was worth marveling at. Beside him, Elara exhaled quietly, the sound fogging slightly in the cool air of the lunar compound. She folded her arms, watching the stars as if they might answer some question she'd been afraid to ask aloud. You don't need to stay quiet anymore, she said softly. The translation module works now. Fully integrated. Just think. Kale didn't answer at first. His eyes moved across the stars like they were fragments of an old memory he hadn't earned yet. The translator hummed at his collarbone, gently syncing with every neural impulse, waiting. I do not know how, came the voice. It was deeper than expected. Halting. Like rust cracking from iron. The words feel wrong. They won't eventually. She smiled. The hard part's already done. He tilted his head toward her. Hard part. You became more than they built you to be. Kale looked down at his hands. He turned them slowly, palms up, claws relaxed. For most of his existence, these had been instruments of death. Designed to puncture armor and gut enemies in a single swipe. Now they trembled when he tried to hold anything delicate. He hadn't realized trembling could be a form of reverence. Why do you help me? He asked. Elara met his eyes. Because I saw you stop. The wind shifted. A soft artificial breeze meant to simulate weather, a small comfort on an otherwise sterile outpost. In the distance, mining drones buzzed like lazy insects, drifting between storage bays and rock clusters. The world didn't care who he had been. It only cared who he became. He felt that truth more each day. Not all the tribunal agreed, he said. They hate me. Some do. They're afraid of what you represent. What do I represent? That even monsters can choose. Kale turned back to the stars. His throat felt tight. He didn't understand how a body could remember killing with such clarity and still ache for something as fragile as peace. Elara, he said, testing her name like a stone between his teeth. If I was born wrong, does choosing right undo it? No, she said. But it begins something better. That answer lingered. He didn't know if he agreed, but the way her voice didn't waver made him want to believe it. The silence was broken by a tremor. Subtle at first but growing. Elara's eyes narrowed. That's not wind. A piercing alarm shattered the quiet. Overhead, the dome darkened as the compound AI redirected power to defense protocols. Turrets rose from the perimeter walls. Shields rippled blue and gold. Kale snapped to motion. His instincts flared like old ghosts. He grabbed Elara and pulled her behind one of the inner support pillars just as the first blast hit. The outpost rocked. Red lights bathed the corridor. Overhead screens flashed symbols neither of them recognized. Incoming vessel. Unauthorized. No ID codes. Trajectory, collision. Then the comm crackled to life. This is Warden Krall of the Sovereign Purity Fleet. Subject Delta 7 is a galactic aberration. The Tribunal has failed. We will complete the cleansing you lacked the resolve to finish. Stand down or be reduced with him. Ilara's jaw clenched. Extremists. Kale's claws scraped lightly against the pillar. They come for me. They're not getting you. Her voice was fire. Sharp, human, and full of something Kale had never known before her, conviction rooted in love. He looked at her, then at the rising shields, and something shifted in his stance. I can stop them. Ilara's eyes snapped to his. You're not going out there. I was built for war. You were rebuilt for peace. They will kill you if I stay. She moved to stop him, but his massive hand gently took hers and pushed it away. I won't kill, he said. Not anymore. But I will not let them take what I've found. He turned and ran. Not like the beast he'd been. Not like the soldier they had trained. But like someone with something worth protecting. The outer doors blasted open to vacuum as Kale breached the shield gate with a force only he could survive. Debris spun around him. Alarms shrieked. The enemy vessel, a black spike of metal and ion fire, was already descending toward the platform, plasma bays glowing with imminent fury. Kale leapt. His body struck the ship's undercarriage like a meteor. Inside the command bridge, Warden Krall barely had time to register the impact before the lights blinked out. Kale's claws punched through the hull, severing conduits and melting circuits with the heat of his internal discharge nodes. He didn't have weapons, but he didn't need them. His body was enough. He tore the navigational thrusters from their mounts and disabled the main cannon with a single blow. But he didn't kill. Every strike was measured. Every enemy he encountered on board was left breathing, unconscious, restrained. Not one life was taken. When the Sovereign Purity vessel spiraled off course and plummeted into the mining trench, its self-destruct core was already deactivated. Kale rode the hull until the last second, then launched himself clear and landed in a crater of smoking rock, crouched like a sentinel from some long-forgotten myth. The outpost watched everything. The Tribunal did too. By the time Ilara reached him, he was already kneeling, head bowed. Not in shame. In choice. She fell to her knees before him, breathless. I told you not to go, she said, tears streaking through soot and ash. He looked at her, then up at the sky. I needed to know if I could protect without destroying. And now. He closed his eyes. Now I know I can be more. The Tribunal convened an emergency session. Kale did not speak. He didn't have to. They had seen it. They had all watched a creature designed to end civilization save one. Without killing. Without hatred. They amended the statutes that day. The Kale Clause. A new law. Any sentient being, no matter its origin, must be granted the chance to prove self-awareness not just in word, but in mercy. Kale stood beside Ilara when the law was passed. No longer a subject. Not a weapon. Not a prisoner. Just Kale. Later that night they sat beneath the same dome of artificial stars. Quiet. Shoulder to shoulder. She read aloud the ending of the Earth myth she'd told him on the first day. And so the monster who had never been loved, laid down at the girl's feet, not because he was tamed but because he was seen. Kale reached for her hand. This time it didn't tremble. I remember, he said. Every moment. Every choice. She looked up at him. And? His voice came like dusk. I choose to begin. The stars above blinked in silence. But inside Kale, something old was finally at peace. And something new had just begun. The galaxy would never forget what almost got destroyed. And it would never forget who saved it. Not with claws. But with mercy.